The key to it is awareness. I mean, like, people don't understand that, if you build security in, you can mitigate a lot of the attacks that are out there. Probably 95 to 98% you can mitigate if security is built in. Not saying it's going to be, security is going to be 100%, but you can reduce your attack surface significantly. Consumers, I think that everyone devices are secure. We just think we buy something and we assume, or we have a level of assurance that, hey, it's okay. But we got to be aware that that's not always the case. And I think what's going to happen is that consumers are going to play an important role, because when they realize that, hey, this is not necessarily secure, they can make a big difference with their dollar.
I think a lot of what it's going to take to raise the bar in terms of software vendors building security into their products is demand from the consumer end and the enterprise consumer or the casual consumer, and that requires a lot of awareness about software security and a lot of not taking things for granted in terms of assuming that things are secure just because a company says that they're using SSL.
So the classic trigger isn't that we don't know what to do to design software, it's that we haven't compelled businesses to want to do it. If you look at the motivation, people always act within their incentive structure, and developers are incentivized to do features quickly, right? As much code as possible, as much functionality as quickly and as cheaply as possible. And that's an enemy to thoughtful, planful security if security is an afterthought. I think some of the natural opportunities to change are that now that the dependence is on things that can affect life and limb and has greater consequences, sometimes the only way to learn is through failure and the liability incurred by some of these folks with a bad PR and bad goodwill, or bad will rather. But moreover, there's also some cultural changes going on in application development. The DevOps movement, for example, is breathtaking and terrifying in some ways, but it's also a cultural shift where people have figured out that if ops and dev people align incentives, they're more efficient and they can make more changes more quickly and be more nimble. And I think that's a perfect opportunity, what we call rugged DevOps, where security people can see this as a chance to redefine how they drive value into that software supply chain and help drive down complexity, risk, they get more instrumentation. And it's the kind of cultural change we won't see again for another 30 years, so it falls to us to try to make sure we embrace this opportunity.
I think for security to be built into the product, software vendors are going to have to see a true, most of them are going to have to see a true monetary value associated with it, demand, a request by the customer to actually say, let's have security, and why does it matter? What's the delta that creates that situation that allows me, that creates a vacuum that I'm going to fill with secure software?
It really comes down to two things. One would be a trigger from the buyer as to the requirements of what they're looking to buy. So a smarter buyer is probably the best customer, being able to define what they need in their software, whether it be reviews, whether it be attestations, whether it be methodologies, approaches, whatever it may be that they want to specify. There's plenty of guidance out there from different organizations, and many of them can be referenced. The second part of that question about what would it take to be built into their software is going to be liability. Organizations that produce software, depending on what the use case is, there are certain situations where software is being used in systems that cause death and dismemberment. Well, those systems obviously have a higher level of criticality than, let's say, an Angry Birds application on your phone.
But what I think would be good is for consumers and producers to both understand the importance of security as a core critical business function. And so it's not just a non-functional attribute that is left on the sidelines, but it's built into the software. And when consumers require it from the vendors, and vendors produce it, and consumers validate and check to make sure it works as it is supposed to, then I think that's going to raise the bar on security for all the products that we generate.